year is 1500. Imagine a grand feast, a royal court, or even just a bustling town square. A man spots a woman. Maybe she's veiled. Maybe she's surrounded by chaperones. Perhaps she's a noble woman, a merchant's daughter, or even a skilled artisan. Regardless of her station, if she caught his eye, the game was on. But it wasn't a game of witty pickup lines or subtle compliments, not in the way we understand them today. This was a game of public declarations, of carefully orchestrated displays, a performance where every thread of fabric, every gleam of metal, every calculated gesture screamed one thing: status. And in 1500, status wasn't just a bonus. It was the entire foundation of attraction, the bedrock upon which any hope of a future, be it a fleeting courtship or a lifelong alliance, was built. A man's ability to secure a match, especially a desirable one, was less about his personal charm, though that certainly helped, and far more about his verifiable, tangible standing in a world obsessed with hierarchy. If you're finding this dive into historical allure as intriguing as I am, consider sticking around. There's so much more to uncover about how people navigated these intricate social landscapes, and if you haven't already, hitting that subscribe button ensures you won't miss any of these journeys back in time. It helps us keep digging into the peculiar and often astonishing ways our ancestors lived and loved. Now picture that world. The turn of the 16th century Europe was a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and city-states, a vibrant but often brutal place teetering on the edge of massive transformation. Feudalism was giving way, slowly, to more centralized monarchies, but the old order of nobility, land, and lineage still held immense sway. Society was rigidly structured, almost like a beautifully illustrated manuscript, each person occupying a specific page, bound by custom and expectation. Marriage, especially among the upper echelons, was rarely, if ever, about romantic love in the modern sense. It was a strategic alliance, a merger of families, a consolidation of wealth, land, or political influence. For a man, attracting a suitable partner meant proving he was a valuable asset, not just a warm body with a pretty smile. The competition was fierce, a silent battle waged with appearances, possessions, and reputations. How did a man even begin to signal his worth in such a demanding, visually driven environment? How did he cut through the noise of 100 other hopefuls, all vying for attention and, ultimately, for alliance? It began, almost always, with what you could see. The most immediate, undeniable signal of a man's status was his clothing. Forget the drab, functional garments we often associate with the past. The wealthy men of 1500 were peacocks, strutting through courts and cities in ensembles designed to dazzle and impress. Every stitch was a declaration. Velvets, silks, brocades. These weren't just fabrics, they were currencies. Importing silk from the Far East, velvet from Italy, or fine wool from England was incredibly expensive, a luxury only the truly affluent could afford. A man dressed in crimson velvet, perhaps lined with fur, immediately marked himself as a person of substance. The furs themselves told a story: ermine for royalty, sable for high nobility, less exotic furs for those of lesser, but still considerable means. These were not simply warm linings. They were statements of dominion over rare and valuable resources. And then there was the sheer volume of fabric. Clothes weren't tailored for slim, athletic silhouettes. Instead, voluminous sleeves, padded shoulders, and generous cloaks consumed yards and yards of precious material. This excess wasn't wasteful. It was deliberate. It showed he could afford such extravagance, that he was so wealthy he didn't need to scrimp on a single yard. The cut and style were equally important, dictated by rapidly evolving fashions that often originated in Italy or Spain before spreading across Europe. A man wearing the latest fashion, perhaps a doublet with slashes revealing a contrasting silk lining, or wide breeches that were the height of modern elegance, signaled his connection to the cultural centers of power and his access to skilled tailors. This wasn't just about looking good, it was about looking relevant. Beyond the main garments, accessories played a critical role. Jewelry, of course, but not just a simple ring. Think heavy gold chains, often adorned with precious stones. Pearls were incredibly prized, imported from distant seas, and often sewn onto garments or worn in ropes. Rings, adorned with family crests or symbols of allegiances, were common. These weren't subtle adornments. They were flashing beacons of wealth. Belts, too, could be works of art, studded with gems or intricate metalwork. And then there were the often overlooked details, like elaborate purses worn at the hip, sometimes embroidered with gold thread, indicating he had coin to carry, and therefore coin to spend. A finely crafted dagger or sword, with a jeweled hilt, wasn't just a weapon. It was an extension of his status, symbolizing his ability to defend himself, his honor, and his family. The very act of carrying such a weapon implied a certain freedom, a right to bear arms that wasn't extended to everyone. But it wasn't just about personal adornment. A man's retinue spoke volumes. Walking into a public space alone was often a sign of little consequence. A man of status would be accompanied by servants, pages, guards, or even fellow gentlemen. The size and appearance of this entourage directly reflected his wealth and power. Imagine a nobleman arriving at court, not just with a single squire, but with a dozen liveried servants, their clothing also reflecting his household's colors and crest. This wasn't merely for convenience or safety. It was a living, breathing demonstration of his ability to command resources and people. Each person in his retinue was a testament to his financial and social standing, showing he could afford to employ and support them. These retinues created a physical buffer, an aura of importance around the man, making him stand out from the common throng, drawing the gaze of anyone observing. And what about the horses? In an era before automobiles, a man's horse was a primary status symbol, almost an extension of himself. Not just any horse, but a magnificent warhorse, a Spanish jennet known for its grace, or a strong Frisian. These animals were incredibly expensive to acquire, train, and maintain. Their tack, too, was a display of wealth. Saddles intricately tooled, bridles adorned with silver, and blankets emblazoned with family crests. To be seen riding a spirited, well-bred horse, rather than trudging along on foot or on a humble beast of burden, immediately elevated a man's perceived standing. It indicated he had the means for travel, for sport, and for war, all activities associated with the upper classes. A man arriving mounted, with his retinue following, was a man who commanded attention and respect. It was a spectacle designed to impress, to broadcast his prosperity without uttering a single word. Of course, all these visible trappings were merely symptoms of a deeper reality: wealth and land. In 1500, land was the ultimate source of power and income. A man's estates, his castles, his manors, his villages, these were the physical manifestations of his status. While he couldn't exactly bring his castle to the market square, the symbols of his land ownership were everywhere. His coat of arms, displayed on his signet ring, on his horse's trappings, on his servant's livery, spoke of generations of ownership, of tenants, of agricultural production, and of a fixed place in the social order. The richer he was, the more land he controlled, and the more tenants worked for him, generating the income that paid for all those velvets, pearls, and horses. Marriage, for noble families, was often about consolidating these landholdings, merging two powerful entities into an even more formidable one. Thus, a man's reputation for wealth, his known lineage, and the extent of his family's holdings was a powerful, unspoken argument for his desirability. Even if a woman never saw his estates, the common knowledge of his family's prosperity was a potent draw. But status wasn't purely about inherited wealth. Military prowess and personal bravery were also potent attractors, particularly in a period where conflict was common. A man who had distinguished himself in battle, who carried honorable scars, or who was known for his courage and leadership, earned a different kind of respect. He might not have been born to immense wealth, but his deeds could elevate him. The stories of his valor, circulated at court, could make him a desirable match, especially if he had been rewarded with lands or titles by a grateful monarch. A knight who had proven himself in tournaments, displaying skill with lance and sword, also garnered admiration. These were public spectacles where men could showcase their physical strength, courage, and mastery of martial arts, qualities deeply admired in a warrior society. The victor of a tournament, decked in shining armor, carrying the favor of a lady, was a powerful image of masculine achievement, a man whose physical capabilities were as impressive as his lineage. And then there was influence and access. This might be less outwardly flashy than a velvet cloak, but it was just as important. A man who had the ear of a king, a powerful duke, or even a bishop, held immense sway. His ability to secure favors, grants, or appointments for himself and his future family was a significant advantage. This type of status was demonstrated through his presence at court, his interactions with high-ranking officials, the respectful greetings he received, and the subtle deference shown to him by others. Being seen conversing intimately with a powerful figure, or being part of an inner circle, communicated his proximity to power, suggesting he could offer protection, opportunity, and advancement to his wife and children. This wasn't just about personal gain. It was about the security and future prospects he could guarantee. For a woman, marrying into such a network meant not just a husband, but a powerful advocate for her family's interests. Beyond the raw power and wealth, a certain level of cultural refinement and education was also starting to emerge as a marker of status, particularly in the burgeoning Renaissance courts. While not as universally prized as land or military might, a man who could speak multiple languages, who was versed in classical literature, who could play a musical instrument, or who had an appreciation for art and poetry, was seen as a Renaissance man. This intellectual prowess suggested not just intelligence but also the leisure and means to acquire such knowledge. Such accomplishments set him apart from the purely martial nobility, hinting at a more sophisticated, nuanced character. Imagine a nobleman who, amidst the rough and tumble of court politics, could quote Virgil or compose a sonnet for his intended. This displayed a sensitivity, a breadth of understanding that could be incredibly appealing, suggesting a depth of character beyond mere bravado or ostentation. It hinted at a cultivated mind, capable of engaging in intellectual discourse and appreciating the finer aspects of life, a compelling contrast to those who relied solely on their birthright. The crucial point here, though, is that none of these elements existed in isolation. A man didn't just flash a gold chain, he wore it with the latest fashion, rode a magnificent horse, attended by liveried servants, all while being known for his family's vast estates and perhaps a heroic deed in battle. It was a symphony of status signals, a carefully curated persona designed to leave no doubt about his position in the world. Every element reinforced the others, creating an undeniable impression of power, wealth, and influence. The goal wasn't just to be seen, but to be understood as a man of significant standing. What's so striking about this era is the sheer performative aspect of it all. Seduction wasn't about vulnerability or emotional connection in the initial stages. It was about presenting an unassailable case for one's worth as a partner, a provider, and a protector. It was a public advertisement of one's assets, tailored for an audience acutely aware of social distinctions. The women, and more importantly, their families, were not looking for a good heart above all else. They were looking for security, alliance, and advancement, and men understood this implicitly. They dressed for it, rode for it, fought for it, and cultivated their reputations around it. The subtle art of showing status was, in essence, the entire courtship ritual, a complex dance where every movement, every costume change, every grand gesture was calculated to secure the most advantageous match. So, when we look back at the elaborate clothing, the grand ceremonies, the detailed chronicles of noble lives, we're not just seeing historical curiosities, we're seeing the very fabric of attraction and ambition woven into the tapestry of everyday life. These men were masters of impression management, using every tool at their disposal to signal their value in a world that demanded it. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of that ancient game of status, of broadcasting our value, still plays out today, just in different clothes and different settings. Are we really so different from our 16th century counterparts, even with all our modern complexities? If this journey through the past sparked your imagination, then perhaps you'd like to explore how women, in turn, mirrored these displays or even subtly subverted them to secure their own positions. Let me know what you think in the comments below, or better yet, share this video with someone who'd appreciate a deep dive into historical romance and social dynamics. And if you're eager for more insights into the intricate dance of attraction throughout history, make sure you're subscribed. We've got so many more fascinating stories to tell.